Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hey everyone, welcome to Side Quests. My name is Charles Harte. I'm an associate editor at Game Informer, and this week I'm going to talk about Star Wars: The Force Unleashed. I really love this game. It's something I specifically have a lot of nostalgia for, so I was really glad to just sit down and talk a bunch about it. This game came out, I believe, in 2008. And it is a game that I played as a kid. I was 8 at the time, so I was pretty young. And it was the first teen-rated game I ever played. And I remember my uncle got it for me for Christmas, for me and my brother. And my mom was kind of mad at him about it. She's like, "It's rated teen. It's gonna be so violent." It's a pretty soft teen rate. It's teen rated in tone, but there's not dismemberment. There's not even blood anywhere because it's lightsabers and stuff. But yeah, and I remember thinking it was so cool that I get to play this cool secret game. If you're not familiar with the game, it is a Star Wars story about Darth Vader having a secret apprentice in the space between episodes 3 and 4. This is pre-Disney buying Star Wars, and so it was an era where you could just kind of make stuff up. There's a lot of Star Wars sanctioned fan fiction. It kind of felt and a lot of it was very popular and stuff has been accepted as canon. But after Disney bought Star Wars, they kind of wiped the slate clean and they established their own sort of thing. So this is pre all that. This is pre Ahsoka Tano, I think, even. But it was a fun era to imagine. It's an era of Star Wars I miss, where it was very unexplored, and the concept of introducing this was controversial. People could he really do that? Could that have never come up? And it's sure, why not? And you play as the apprentice. He's known. He doesn't have a name ever. He's also known as Star Killer is his code name, which I believe in the original Star Wars script is what Luke Skywalker's last name was. They reused it here, but he's just generally the apprentice, what he's known in this game. And yeah, you are a dark side Force user, and you're tasked with hunting down the remaining Jedi and helping out the Empire secretly. And you're Darth Vader's apprentice, but he's keeping you secret from Emperor Palpatine. Because I guess Sith Lords, I think the idea is that one day you two will overthrow him, and then he'll be the Emperor and you'll be the Darth Vader of the bunch. But you basically have to prove your worth to him, and he has to keep you secret from the Emperor. So part of the thing is you show up, no witnesses. And I just love the concept. I think it's so cool. And another cool thing about it is when you're actually playing the game, there is no to be a super powerful Force wielder that has lightsabers and stuff. In video games, especially, it's a problem because you'll just you kill everyone instantly. And to have basically unlimited telekinesis and all these powers, it's really hard to depict that and then have any sense of game balance. This game does a really good job. They just throw a lot of stormtroopers at you, and you can just throw them around. You have just a really wide slate of Force abilities. You can just pick people up at will, throw them around. You can do a repulse where you just do a Force blast out from yourself. You can do Force push, Force pull. Lightning, the Maelstrom, which is, I learned the word Maelstrom from this. I actually don't even know what other context uses the word Maelstrom in, but you suck in a bunch of debris and you charge it up and you expel it out and everyone takes damage. Obviously you can throw your lightsaber. This is also the game. This taught me a lot of violent vocabulary words. I learned the word impale from this because if you lift someone up with the Force, you can throw your lightsaber into them to impale them. Sick and awesome. And yeah, it's I also played it on the Wii, which is probably not the best version of the game. I'm certain other versions of the game look better, and I liked it for the motion controls. I love the idea that I'm swinging my Wii remote and it's swinging a lightsaber, which is the thing that I think if you weren't a kid in the Wii era, it just doesn't hit the same. There's a lot of people that will they dislike motion controls. I understand, they're very fiddly. It's obviously not the best way to design something. But for whatever reason, as a kid, that was so cool, and that was never it was never controversial to say. I love when I swing the Wii remote, Spider-Man web swings, or Link swings his sword, or in this case, Star Killer slashes a bunch of people. He also held his lightsaber backwards in a cool. That was just cool. I don't know, because I had an alternate stance. And yeah, the other thing is the rest of the story. It introduces a bunch of cast of characters that, in my mind, is very iconic. There's Ram Koda, who's one of the first generals you find. He never trusted the clone army, so he made his own militia in the Jedi era, and then when Order 66 happened, he had his own guys that didn't turn on him, so he could kind of retreat on his own. and I guess spoilers for the game. You should play it, but this isn't a huge thing. That you go through and you're trying to kill all these Jedi, and then Darth Vader kind of turns on you, and you have to basically double cross him, but he knows about it, where you're supposed to like then infiltrate the Jedi, infiltrate the rebellion, and try to like plan with them so that Darth Vader can come in and take them out. So while you start off thinking you've killed Rom Koda, you actually just like stun him and injure him, and then you find him later and he like becomes a part of your gang. And he has a really iconic theme. Oh, the music in this is so good. It's composed by a guy named Mark Grisky, who also did music for a bunch of like Star Wars era stuff around this time, games. He composed additional music for Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. He did Knights of the Old Republic 2. He did a bunch of stuff in this time period. Obviously Force Unleashed 2 as well. And that's like one of the biggest, like I wish this was on Spotify. I wish there was an easy way, if not Spotify, just some place I could purchase this music to have it, because it's very important to my childhood, but it's also really, really good. And it's an interesting challenge whenever you have outside composers tackle something like Star Wars that has a very iconic sound, and he does a really, really good job of just nailing the vibe and the instrumentation and all of it. And yeah, there's also a multiplayer mode where you could play as a like shocking number of like Star Wars expanded universe characters, and it was like a 3D kind of fighting game, and you had all your force powers, but it's not something I would play nowadays and be like, this is a really well designed game. But it was another thing where like through the lens of being 8 years old, it was just so cool to be Luke Skywalker, or they had Mara Jade Skywalker, who was like Luke's wife at the time. I don't really know. I never really learned a lot of the lore about this. This is my only exposure to a lot of it, especially since Disney ended up buying Star Wars and I didn't have the chance to like delve deeper into it. But I remember loving that mode as well, and just the fact that there were some maps where you could just throw your enemies into like space. You could throw them out of the hangar and you would just instantly win, which is super cool. And yeah, I just really love this game. I love the tone of it. They made a sequel and it's not nearly as good, so I just keep coming back to this game. And then Starkiller as a character is very interesting to me. He's played by Sam Witwer, who they also like modeled the character's face after his, but he went on to act in a bunch more stuff, including I believe he's Darth Maul in the Clone Wars series. He does a really, really good job. His character, he really does a lot to establish his character and his inner turmoil. And it's very believable the way he's like devoted to the dark side, but ends up kind of doubting himself, but he's just so angry, and it comes across very well, especially given that this is like, 2008 era animations and stuff. I have a lot of personal specific memories of playing this game. I remember, the most iconic one of this is my brother Andre, who's 2 years younger than me at the time. It took us so long to get through this game. When you're kids, you're stupid. You don't know how things work. Years later, it was probably like 2011 or something. He had finally gotten to like the ending of the game. He was up against the final boss, and he was better than me at games pretty quickly, even though he was younger. And he got to facing Emperor Palpatine. Spoiler alert, that's who you're fighting in the end. And he freaked out because the Emperor's face model was so ugly. It like made him cry and gave him nightmares. He hated it. It was so scary to him. And you look it up and it's not that bad, but just so funny to think of like you design a character in such a way that it just like terrifies kids. He had seen the movies. He knew what Emperor Palpatine looked like. It was just specifically this version. And for whatever reason, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, where my mom was like, all right, you guys can't play teen games anymore because they're too scary. And it's like, Mom, this game you can impale people with your lightsabers. You can force choke people. There's a lot of really violent things you can do. It had nothing to do with that. It was just this one guy's face. But Andre was like 9 at the time. So that's about as scary as it gets. Another big memory is on Raxus Prime. There's a little guy named Kazdan Paratus. And he is Yoda-like in the sense that he's just a small Jedi, but is very like aerial and can just jump around a bunch. And the fight against him, and right before him, there's a Junk Titan. For some reason, these were so difficult for us as kids. And to finally beat him was like, to beat the Junk Titan was like a huge accomplishment. And then Kazdan Paratus is just a little guy. You can just throw him around with the Force and ragdoll him. And that was so funny to us. But it was also, we got the game at Christmas. We were visiting our family in New York, and they had a Wii there. And we just didn't, because it was their Wii, and I think the progress is saved on the console, we made it so far in the game and had to replay a bunch of it just in order to catch back up to where we were. So there's a lot of replaying the game, which I'm very familiar with, like the earlier levels and a lot of the dialogue there. They also had, part of the reason the Junk Titan was so hard, but just bosses in general, is there's a lot of quick time events in this game when you were finishing a boss off. And a quick time event on, an Xbox controller is like RT, X, Y, A, B, and you're pressing the buttons in time, or maybe a combination of buttons or whatever. On the Wii, sometimes it was pressing a button, but a lot of times you had to orient the Wii remote to fit in a very specific shape. To do it really quickly was really hard. So probably like a good 70% of a boss fight for us was just struggling against the QuickTime events over and over again, because that was how the motion controls were. And again, not good design, but at the time it was the coolest thing in the whole world. And also, every time it would trigger the QuickTime event, there'd be a little doo, like a little sound of like a synth beep, doo, to cue up that you're about to do a QuickTime event. And for many, many, many years of my life, I just referred to QuickTime events as the do thing, because it went do, and that's what it was. It was a do thing. So anytime there's a QuickTime event in the game, assuming there's a beep, that's the do thing. And that's how you do really. That's how we would play games like outside, and we'd have really cool finishers and be like, I'm gonna do the do thing, and that would mean that I was doing like a really complicated animation that's like the character would never normally be able to do this, but since it was the big climax of the fight, this was exactly what got to happen. Anyways, I absolutely love this game. It was one of my most nostalgic games ever, and a nice game that every time I revisit it, I've yet to get to a point where it's like aged so poorly I can't touch it anymore. There's some games where it's like I actually love this game, but I don't want to go back to it. This is one where every time I've replayed it, I've been like, man, this still hits. One day I'll go back to it on like a console other than the Wii to hopefully see decent graphics or make the QuickTime events easier. But I'm very glad for the time that I had in my childhood with the version that I did. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to check out The Force Unleashed, it is available on Steam, I believe, and it's almost always on sale. I think they also made a recent port to Switch and a lot of other modern consoles. Pick it up on sale. It'll be like $5 for the game and all DLC. Really good glimpse into like this specific era of Star Wars right before it became all Disneyfied. And might be nostalgic for some of you, and might be educational for others of you that didn't check out Star Wars at the time. Thanks so much for listening. This has been Charles Harte from Game Informer. You can, of course, go to GameInformer.com/subscribe to the magazine and keep me in business, but I didn't get paid to say that. Or I do get paid to say that every day of the week, actually. But anyways, thanks so much for listening, and happy gaming.
Hello there! My name is Leo, and I'm here to tell you all about my Dune podcast, Gom Jabbar, the perfect podcast for new fans of Dune and longtime fans of Dune alike. My co-host Abu and I dive deep in both spoiler-free and spoiler-heavy episodes covering Frank Herbert's original novels, the film adaptations, the board games, the comics, the upcoming video games, the HBO TV series, anything we can get our hands on. We even have a companion book club series to make your first or your 15th read-through even better. So, if you recently saw Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Dune, or if you read Dune back when it came out in 1965, this is the podcast for you. You can find Gom Jabbar on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, pretty much anywhere you find your podcasts, and we hope you join us on the Golden Path.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.